In today's video, I want to talk about EA not holding a traditional E3 press conference. This is following in suit with Sony also saying they're not going to be holding an E3 press conference, but in the case of EA, I think it's a lot more notable. Sony is doing perfectly fine right now. We've seen a lot of gameplay of their upcoming games, and those games are going to do just fine. They don't really need to hold an E3 press conference to heighten the anticipation of those games, and I think the majority of us are well aware of the fact that Sony is probably working on the PlayStation 5 at this point, and a lot of their first parties are working on PS5 games, and they're not ready to show them. In the case of EA, they're just a third-party publisher, so them skipping out on E3 I think says a lot. And generally, I want to talk about the state of EA and whether or not they're in big trouble right now, and part of me thinks that they are. Yes, EA is the easiest to hate publisher in gaming right now. I think bar none. Maybe they are neck and neck with Blizzard after Diablo Immortal, but prior to Diablo Immortal, it was a one-horse race. I think EA was even more hated than an Activision, and that's just because what they've done to so many video game franchises. Has it entirely been EA's fault as a publisher? I don't know if I could go that far, but let's look at some of those franchises that were regarded as major gaming franchises that were heralded by gamers, and somehow over the last few years, it has just been a complete train wreck. I point to Star Wars Battlefront first. EA had acquired the license to create Star Wars video games, and it seemed like a license to print money at that point. When you get an IP like Star Wars Battlefront and you can recreate it for a modern audience, if you do it well, it is going to resonate at an extreme level with gamers. I point you back to the first game that came out, back in 2015? That game was okay, but it just lacks so much content for a $59.99 release. Then you move to Star Wars Battlefront 2, and it's well publicized what happened with that game. That game was riddled with microtransactions. Initially, that was the plan. It just got so much negative PR, and even at this point, while Battlefront 2 objectively is a pretty good game if you go into it now in 2019, EA from a promotional standpoint did so much damage to that game, and it has been a train wreck ever since. I don't even know if Star Wars as a video game franchise can be revived from EA. I don't think Battlefront can be anywhere near as big as it could have been if it was just a success from Battlefront initially. A first impression has already been made, and you guys know it's very, very hard to recover from it. It's possible, but it's very difficult. Then I point to Mass Effect. Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 is heralded as one of the best video game trilogies ever. Even with the lackluster ending to Mass Effect 3, I think the majority would agree those games are tremendous. And then you look at Mass Effect Andromeda, what happened with that this generation, one of the most disappointing games of this generation. It was a mediocre RPG at best, and I probably liked it more than most people, but it's easy to say it's a colossal disappointment. Need for Speed this generation, how big of a train wreck has that been? Need for Speed Rivals was okay, but the most recent two games, man oh man, Need for Speed has lost a lot of luster compared to the heyday of Need for Speed. Then you look at Mirror's Edge. The 2008 release at this point is a cult classic. Mirror's Edge Catalyst, not so much. A game that's worth the $5 when it goes on sale, but definitely didn't resonate at the level I think a lot of gamers expected it to. Most recently, we saw what happened with Battlefield 5. That game from a promotional standpoint, again, a promotional train wreck. The game fundamentally, not a bad game at all. In fact, I would go as far as to say it's a pretty good Battlefield game, but the promotion of that game was an absolute train wreck. That does DICE no favors. That completely was an EA blunder. From a promotional standpoint, Battlefield 5 was a train wreck. I point you back to E3, and that's very relevant because EA is skipping E3. What the hell was that E3 conference in terms of promoting Battlefield 5? Battlefield 5 was the game going into that E3 press conference that you should have promoted. And what did we see out of that E3 press conference? We saw a cinematic single-player trailer. What justice does that do to Battlefield? I know that Battlefield has always had a single-player campaign, and hey, I've enjoyed some of them. I enjoyed Battlefield 5's, but that is a game that should be promoted inherently based on its multiplayer. What we should have seen is a big multiplayer gameplay demo showcasing everything new in Battlefield 5, showcasing reasons gamers should be excited, but instead, that audience you have at E3, that hardcore audience that wants to see more Battlefield, what did you show them? You showed them a cinematic single-player trailer, and then you transition right into mobile games. How anyone with half a brain cell didn't realize that that was a bad idea? Sure, work on your mobile games, maybe have a montage video package where you showcase all of your mobile games in one video at E3. Altogether, I would say mobile games should be far away from E3 because just like Blizzard did with Diablo Immortal, there's a time and place for everything. There's a time you can showcase mobile games, and it absolutely is not at a major E3 press conference where the most hardcore of gamers are watching, where the most hardcore of gamers are trying to see the latest and greatest in your games, and to show a bunch of mobile trailers, come on, that was just a complete blunder on their part. And of course, after Battlefield 5, I was saying for a long time heading into Anthem's release, the more I was seeing of that game, the more anticipation I was personally building. It seemed like some of you guys remained skeptical, and probably rightfully so, but now we have the blunder that Anthem has turned out to be. I mean, you can say so much about Anthem, and that game honestly has resonated with me more so than a lot of other people. I personally feel that if you play with a couple of friends, Anthem can be a really good experience. Unfortunately, you see what the game is from a fundamental standpoint. There is a lack of endgame content. And technically speaking, how we are still having technical messes in 2019 where games are crashing PlayStation 4 systems to the point where PS4 systems are completely shutting off. How does this even happen? Where is quality assurance? And for a game like this coming out of BioWare, it was imperative for BioWare that they deliver something of the utmost quality. And you can say, yes, Anthem is a game that's going to evolve over the next year, the next 2 years, but it was imperative that they delivered a quality product from the get-go, especially coming off of the release of Mass Effect Andromeda, especially coming off of the general negative reception with EA. It was absolutely of utmost importance that Anthem turned out to be a good game, and we see what we got at the end of the day. Anthem was just another blunder. Out of every publisher, who can you point to that has just had major franchise after major franchise, major IP after major IP, these new projects, all of them be absolute disasters, from Star Wars Battlefront, Need for Speed, Battlefield, Mass Effect, Mirror's Edge, Catalyst, and now Anthem. It's just been disaster after disaster after disaster. I only can point to you like a Square Enix maybe, and they're not even at that level. Square Enix has been pretty bad recently too, after games like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Just Cause 4, The Quiet Man, and most recently Left Alive, but generally speaking, those games don't have the mainstream appeal as a Mass Effect, as a Battlefield, as some of the other EA properties that have just been complete disasters. Again, Star Wars Battlefront, that one is the most mind-boggling to me because it was handed to EA on a silver platter. If you just did right by Star Wars fans, if you just did right by multiplayer third-person shooter fans, that game and that franchise would be a license to print money. And how Star Wars Battlefront 2 in 2019 isn't one of the most popular games in the gaming market, that is shocking to me, but it kind of goes to show the state of EA right now. And I can even point to other horrible mistakes that EA have made recently, and this will transition into my next point, but I point to something like Titanfall 2's release. Why was Titanfall 2 released around the same time as a bunch of other first-person shooters, multiplayer first-person shooters at that? One of them being EA's own release in Battlefield 1. How nobody could think, hey, this is probably a bad idea. Battlefield 1 is about to come out, Infinite Warfare is about to come out, Overwatch just came out a couple of months ago, but nah, let's put out Titanfall 2, let's see how the game does. And of course, it was a commercial bomb. Critically, that game was received very well, and it goes to show Respawn is an incredibly talented studio, because most recently, they have put out EA's only saving grace in Apex Legends. Thank God for EA, from an EA standpoint, that Apex Legends has been a colossal success, a success that I don't think anyone was really seeing coming, because that is the one thing you can at least hearken to and be like, that game was a success. That game is seeing a lot of attention right now, and positive attention at that. And of course, EA is always going to have their sports games to fall back to, but in terms of the major releases that were for hardcore gamers, it has been disaster after disaster after disaster. And now with them not holding an E3 press conference, I think it kind of shows where they're at from a mental standpoint. What games are you really going to show? Are you going to show more mobile games like last year? The negative reception towards EA is at an all-time high. E3, where the hardcore gamers are watching, I'm sorry, if you show off more Madden gameplay that we don't care about, if you show off more Anthem DLC, where Anthem is just not a game resonating. Again, I should know that EA will be still holding their EA Play event from June 7th to June 9th, but in terms of a conference where we'll be seeing new footage, that's not going to be happening. And again, you can make the comparisons to Sony, but Sony, I think, is in a special scenario right now. We already know the bulk of the games that they're working on. They have an exclusive roster of games lined up for 2019, and those games are looking tremendous. We've seen a lot of those games as well. What more can you really show at E3? If E3 is not the time you're announcing the PlayStation 5, and again, a lot of the first-party studios are probably working on PS5 games, what's the point of even running an E3 press conference just to show more gameplay of games we've already seen enough of? If they want to forego on E3, by all means, Sony can do that because they're at a good position. For EA, E3 should be a spot where they can highlight some of their more exciting games and trying to rebuild that attention, trying to rebuild that positive reception, and I think there's no possible way they could even do that with E3. Now, the decision of them not having an E3 press conference could have been made months ago. It could have been made a while ago before the Anthem disaster even happened, but it's just that this, building on top of all of the disasters, I think that spells out a lot in terms of the situation that EA is in right now. Again, in terms of finance, I don't think they're going to be in big trouble. They've got all the sports games. People are still buying their games, but you look at the commercial reception for some of these games of Battlefield 5, it looks like Anthem isn't doing all too hot. The Need for Speed games generally haven't been pretty good. I do think EA needs a shot in the arm right now, and Apex Legends is great, but they need more than that. That's going to conclude this video. Definitely want to hear from you guys because there's so much to digest when talking about EA in 2019 and beyond. So sound off with all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.